Alright folks, how you doing? So welcome to Scotland, the land of Sparta, part 2. Copyright disclaimer under section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship and research, etc, etc, etc. So, the true site of Thermopylae. To an extent, we may trace the manoeuvres of Xerxes in this expedition to overthrow Athens, which took place shortly before the destruction of Babylon. As he marched his vast conscript army westward through Thrace and Macedonia, his fleet sailed round the coast to seek battle with the Greeks, and eventually it reached the western highlands and Hebrides. Having passed through the Aegean Sea, probably so named after the monster Aegeos or Aegeon, hence the Isle of Aeg, the fleet proceeded to the Strait of Euripus, I think that's how you say it, the Sound of Mull, situated between Euboea, Mull, and the Magnesian coast of Thessaly, Morven. The mouth of the Peneus, Lochlin, and the Firth of Lorn, I think it is. Let me just move it out of the way a wee bit. The Firth of Lorn. Hearing that the Athenian ships were cruising round the mouth of the Peneus, Lochlin, and the Firth of Lorn, right, it's right there, of course, the Persians sent a strong squadron round Euboea to force them into the Euripus, where the main Persian fleet was waiting to entrap them. This strategy was defeated by a severe gale in that stormy sea, which drove the Persian ships off Euboea upon the reefs, in which the entire squadron was wrecked about the hollows of Euboea. I hope I'm saying that right. The hollows agree with the notoriously dangerous Taurin rocks off the southern shore of Mull. Come on, next slide. Oh, there we go. Defending the pass. The Athenians advanced nevertheless against the Persian fleet, being superior sailors and knowing their home waters, but after indecisive actions they retreated southward to Salamis, and the Persians sailed up the Peneus River, Lochlin, anchored near Thermopylae, Pass of Glencoe, and were permitted by Xerxes to view the scene of the epic fight where Leonidas and his army had died to a man defending the pass. Here is one more sidelight on this war. And of course, who did they get to play? The great hero Leonidas, none other than the Scottish actor Gerard Butler. In Macedonia, Inverness, when Xerxes was yet in Macedonia, in the region of Inverness, from whence he could espy the Olympus Mountains, the Lochaber Range, he was taken in a galley to view the scene of the Deucalion deluge, the flood of Noah, and observing the gorge between Olympus, Ben Nevis, Pelion, Craig Macade, and Ossa, probably Anok Beg, he observed nothing more is needed than to turn the river upon their lands by an embankment which should fill the gorge and force the stream from its present channel, and lo, Glengoy and the flood of Deucalion. All Thessaly, except the mountains, would at once be laid under water. This is entirely in accordance with the terrain around Ben Nevis, and in descending from Loch Ness and Lochie, Xerxes would sight the gorge through which turns the River Speen, following into the Lochie River at Muckamer Falls. Oh, that's how you say it. Surrounded on either side and hemmed in by high mountains, their flanks marked by what are termed parallel roads, actually sea beaches mentioned earlier, from 1,278 feet above sea level at Glengoy, visible from Loch Lochie, to various levels of 1,140 feet, 1,059 feet, and 847 feet. Geeky, the eminent geologist, held views similar to those held by Xerxes some 300 years earlier. Geeky was of the opinion that immense glaciers may have held up the waters, but he could not account for their presence. He was unaware that they related to the flood of Deucalion or the flood of Noah. Mount Olympus, Ben Nevis. The significance of the visit of Xerxes is that he could not have gone secretly in a galley from Macedonia to Thessaly in the present Greece except by the open sea, risking capture or worse, yet he went safely by water to spy out the terrain. The classic map of Thessaly, in fact, completely fails to meet the circumstances. Mount Olympus is placed at the extreme north of Thessaly and is correct of Ben Nevis in Argyllshire, the true Thessaly. But Mount Pindus is put in the extreme west, whereas Aristotle claims that the deluge occurred west of Pindus, and Thermopylae is given the very south of Thessaly, with the Pindus range to its northwest, over 60 miles distant as the crow flies, whereas these mountains lay to its east. Xerxes obviously saw the traces of the deluge in the parallel roads, for the topography applies completely to the Western Highlands and in no single respect to the modern Greece. So there you go. This is why authors such as Thomas Beaumont are so necessary, these revisionist historians who have the balls, the audacity to challenge mainstream history just by pointing out, well, by the way, the topography is all wrong. This is what it says in the account. We look at the map, doesn't match up. Anyway, the pass of Glencoe. The same connection applies equally to the pass of Thermopylae, which, by the way, I've seen on it was either the History Channel or the Discovery Channel or on YouTube. You know, historians, geologists going, hang on, what does it say? This doesn't quite match up. Give me a break. Anyway, let's get back to it here. By the terrain indicates that it could only relate to the dread pass of Glencoe, and at once explains how the Persian ships could have sailed up the Peneus River, Loch Lynn, to the Gulf of Malice, Loch Leven, whereas in modern Greece it is 70 miles distant from the Gulf of Malice. In western Scotland, the Spean, see if Peneus, runs rapidly through the great mountain basin of the Lochaber Range, swelled in times of spate by the waters of dozens of highland burns, swirls through the Muckaber Falls, and then after uniting its waters with the widening river called the Lochie, but both merge into the river Loch Lynn, upper and lower. Anyway, Loch Leven, the Gulf of Malice. After coursing through Inverlochy Glen, the stream reaches Loch Leven, formerly Mally, now Kilmally, the Church of Mally, answering to the Gulf of Malice, on whose southern shore lies the entrance into the pass of Glencoe. It can therefore be readily understood how and why the Persians from the western shores could sail 22 miles or so from the mouth of Loch Lynn to the Gulf of Malice, Loch Leven, to inspect Thermopylae, and how Xerxes from the other end could sail down from the direction of Loch Ness to inspect the marks of the Deucalion deluge on the mountain flanks, but not by any other means. At the mouth of Thermopylae, the Hellenes had erected a fort or wall of loose stones and narrowed down the entrance to fit only 2 men at a time, and as Herodotus tells us, they were prepared to defend it to a man. The Gorge of Glencoe. Leonidas, again played by a Scotsman of all people. Hollywood's full of actors. They just happened to pick a Scotsman, just randomly. Anyway, yeah, okay. Leonidas held the enemy here at bay until a man of Trachis showed the enemy another very high pass, by which means they took the Spartans in the rear. Examination of the Gorge of Glencoe from the southern end of Loch Leven confirms the fact that a few resolute men could hold the pass there against a multitude, as was known to the hero Leonidas and his followers. The other pass, called Anope by Herodotus, was rough climbing, steep, and rarely used. Here the Spartan king had placed 1,000 Phocians, but when these saw masses of Persians clambering up the gully sides, they became panic-stricken and fled. The Devil's Staircase, Anopeia Pass. The Anopeia Pass may be sought in the narrow, steep, and rugged defile much nearer to Kinloch Leven, which, if climbed from its eastern side, could cut off defenders at the mouth of Glencoe like rats in a trap. Its Gaelic name is Anna Cair Othar Big. Hope I'm saying that, pronouncing it correctly. And it is also known to many as the Devil's Staircase. Once through the pass of Thermopylae, all roads were open to Xerxes. Phocis, Locris, the Peloponnesus, and Athens. One road lay past Doris, a tiny area not over 3.5 miles in circumference, which led to Achaia and Locris. Duror, to this day a strip of alluvial land bordering on Lochlan. The Achaeans, a brave, chivalrous but sporadic clan, were congregated along the banks of the Peneus in the present Applin and Benderloch region between Duror and Dunstafnig Castle. Delphi and Athens, Dumbarton. There were the roads open to Delphi and Athens, which apparently was Dumbarton, of all places. By the way, remember, what was it when Prince Harry and this one's wife, as H.G. Tudor likes to call him, remember they didn't want Archie to be known as the Earl of Dunbarton because it had the word dumb in it, according to them, which is incorrectly spelled. It should be Dunbarton, if you know what Dun means. Dun means fortification or castle. So Dunbarton means the castle guarding the Barton area. Like Dunfermline, Dundee, things like that, you know. Dunedin, which is the proper name for Edinburgh. That's the actual right name for Edinburgh, by the way. Edinburgh is the anglicised version of it. And in New Zealand, they've still got the town Dunedin, which is basically Edinburgh's right and proper name. But anyway, sorry, I'm in a bit of a ranty mood today, you know. Maybe I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. But it's not Dumbarton, it's Dunbarton, to be precise. But anyway. Same as in Edinburgh, the Cannons Gate. It's incorrect, and the Cowgate is incorrectly spelled. It should be Gait. It means like street or walkway. There's even a pub. That's actually where I went for my my birthday when I turned 39. I went to the Cannons Gate, and I chose that pub specifically because it was spelt correctly. And because it was correctly spelt, I decided to give them my patronage. The Cowgate, the Canongate, it should be Gait, not Gate. Gate, Gait, means street or pathway. And because that pub had it right, that is where I chose to go for my birthday. Because these things mean something. At least to me they do. But anyway. Ranting over. Let's get back to this. There were roads open to Delphi and Athens, Dumbarton. Dunbarton it should be, but anyway, at the mercy of the enormous armament brought by the Persian king. But this much must suffice. I have said enough, perhaps to convince some at least of my readers that these heroic and important events took place in bonny Scotland, to which country the world owes a debt of freedom it can never repay. Of Xerxes' subsequent march to Delphi, and how he captured Athens, and how the indomitable Athenians held out and fought him grimly until his fleet even was routed at Salamis, and Xerxes retired, terrified that he be cut off at the Hellespont, meaning the North Sea, leaving his general Mardonius to extricate his army out of the mess, is a story often recounted and needs no new pen. There we go. The classic Athens, Dumbarton. I simply prescribe a new geographical outlook on these events, but I shall show elsewhere how and why these are the strongest reasons to believe that the ancient city of Dumbarton, with its rocky acropolis, was the classic Athens up to a period. It is a romance indeed, in which tribal wars and the steady deterioration of climate played their part. It is sufficient to add now that after his disastrous defeat at Salamis, Xerxes fled from Greece in a mighty haste. He is supposed to have crossed the Hellespont again, but even Herodotus is not sure of his movements, though he apparently left hurriedly in a single galley from Abdera in Macedonia, a part of Macedonia. Abdera lay on the river Nessus or Nestus, and Inverness on the Ness may have been built on the site of this once flourishing port on the way to the Hellespont. To Babylon, which apparently was York. Very interesting. It was very soon after this ignominious flight from Hellas that Xerxes hastened to Babylon. still smarting under the heavy defeat he had suffered, his purpose being to indemnify himself for his heavy losses, to recover his waning prestige, and partly out of zeal to establish the Zoroastrian or Mosaic faith. We'll cover all this in the future when we get to Odin's thunder and the war on the west. By reconstructed topography, such a course to reach Babylon, York, conveniently by sea, would have been a simple process. From there, he later took a ship to Sardis, which may be placed as in the Saarbrück region of the Rhine. Consider the orthodox idea as taught in the schools. To have led his forces to Babylon via Sardis, taking the accepted sites, would have entailed a journey of almost 600 miles from the alleged Macedonia and Thrace via the Hellespont to a Lydia in Asia Minor, and thence onwards to Babylon, a further 850 miles at least, or a total of over 1,450 miles entered Babylon. It is an incredible acceptance of marches to lead armed forces at distance, even if they had the commissariat, and it would have occupied an immense amount of time, whereas Xerxes, without taking a rest, actually entered Babylon with little delay in order to restore his damaged prestige. Arrived in Babylon without dispute, he destroyed the temples with fire and utterly laid low the vast temple of Bel, leaving in its place a huge mass of stone, rubble, and dust. He laid hands on the immense treasure stored therein, including solid golden images valued at over 61,000 gold talents, probably worth over 20, is that million? Numbers is not my strength. I'm guessing it's 20 million of the present valuation, and took it away to offset his defeat in Greece. The prophet Ezra, while in Babylon, he extended his patronage to the prophet Ezra, who then went to Jerusalem with a big following. Josephus describes Ezra. There was now in Babylon a righteous man, and one that enjoyed a great reputation among the multitudes. He was the principal priest among the people, the Jews that is, and his name was Esdras. He was very skillful in the laws of Moses and was well acquainted with King Xerxes. Xerxes had written to the various governors of Syria, instructing them to give Ezra all aid on his return to Jerusalem. Ezra read this to the Jews in Babylon and sent a copy of it to those beyond Euphrates, including the 10 tribes beyond the Euphrates, an immense multitude, and not to be estimated by numbers. God would preserve them. It throws a sidelight on past events, for Josephus goes on to say that Ezra had gathered those across the Euphrates, not far distant, but as regarded the remainder of the 10 tribes, he told the king that God would preserve them, and he did not request horsemen or escort to bring them. They were seemingly settled in the present Romania or thereabouts. The Persian tyrants, having thus sacked Babylon and destroyed the famous temple of Bel, with other pagan temples and shrines, went on his way. From this period, the city declined further. Her walls had been largely thrown down. She was despoiled of her riches, strength, and resources, and was compelled to pay heavy tribute. So little wonder her former population drifted elsewhere, and we hear no more of Great Babylon until Alexander the Great. So I think that's it. Yeah, a lot to consider there, and a lot of things touched upon in the last few slides will be covered in the future with Odin's thunder and the war on the west, which is taking a while, but it will take a while because it requires a lot of editing. You know, I would say that's going to maybe take me about 3 months, maybe, to put together, and that's an optimistic estimate. In the meantime, I've still got to cover how Dumbarton is Athens, that chapter from The Great Deception. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and see you the next time.